This is Keys to the Shop, episode number 3, and on today's episode, we talk with Pete Licata all about mentorship. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Keys to the Shop. Super excited to have you here. This is a podcast that's dedicated to giving you the insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. So essentially, if you've just been hired as a barista yesterday, or you've been doing this for 10 years, you could be a manager, you could be an owner, and maybe you're just wondering about how coffee shops work and the culture and the organization and all that, this show is probably going to have something for you. So I'm really excited to have you with us today. My name is Chris DeFirio, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about something that I think is going to apply to almost everybody that's listening. So let's just start by saying, basically, if you want to have a healthy career in coffee, you've got to learn from other people. You've got to learn from not just your own experiences, but also from the experiences of others. Mentorship, our topic today, plays a unique role in our professional development, and a critical one. And it's needed to not just move our career forward, but also the entire industry forward. So today we get to explore this topic with our special guest, the one and only, the legendary, Pete Licata. Pete, if you don't know, is the 2013 U.S. and World Barista Champion. He is the co-owner, along with Holly Baston, of RoastRatings.com, a coffee review site, and owner at Licata Coffee Consultants, both based out of Kansas City, Missouri. And Pete is also a sales rep with Ally Coffee Merchants, a green coffee importing company. So, having known Pete for a good bit, I can tell you that one of his superpowers, among many, is not just his humility or his strong work ethic or his great beard, but it's also his ability to immerse himself in learning, his generosity in helping others to learn as well. So you can imagine that the topic of mentorship today is just naturally something that Pete is thinking about, and he loves to talk about this subject too. So I'm excited to just share this conversation with you. So in the conversation, we're going to explore what mentorship entails. Where are we as an industry in terms of how we teach and how we learn? Or what are the benefits of face-to-face learning versus learning from books and videos and remote learning tools like that? And how do you take the first step to not only find a mentor for yourself in your career, but also to become one for somebody else? There's a lot here, so get ready, and I think you're going to find some pretty useful insights in this conversation. So let's dive in and learn about mentorship from Pete Licata. Pete, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris.
Pete and I were just chatting, catching up here before we started recording this show. Pete and I have known each other for, I think, since 2007. Is that right?
06 or 07, one of the two, yeah.
Yeah. I think the memory I have, earliest memory I have, might be when he placed a Furious IPA on my prep table back in 2007.
That's right.
Back when people were calling me DeFurious in greater number. That was a very nice gesture, Pete. Thank you. Waited all this time to tell you. But, you've just had such a busy schedule. It was like a whirlwind after winning World Barista Championships. But you have been developing businesses, been on the road. You're leaving after this recording, you're leaving for China on Monday. What's going on? What are you up to these days?
Well, currently, let's say with this trip going to China, working on starting a training school and education program in China, which will be kind of a combination of, I don't know if I'll be actually teaching, but teaching SCA courses, but also my own curriculum of kind of just trying to advance people, trying to get people in a place where they are getting really valuable information and learning. Education's been a pretty big part of my entire career is in coffee, but this is kind of just another step that makes a lot of sense and seems like a really good both opportunity and kind of mission for a country like China that is not as I'm going to say as saturated, as just kind of full of people and excitement and passion. There's plenty of passionate people, but they're so under kind of grown at this point, and so it's got a huge amount of room to grow. Been doing that. I've been working on roastratings.com, which we're kind of reviewing coffees. It's a lot of fun tasting coffees from different roasters around the country, and sometimes other countries as well. And it's really interesting to kind of taste what other people are doing, be able to give them some good feedback on it, and stuff like that. And then usual stuff: training, consulting, teaching people how to compete in barista championships, and everything in between.
Wow, that sounds quite a schedule that you've got going on.
Now I'm married and have a kid on the way next month. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness! Congratulations.
Nothing big going on right there, right?
Well, since you've been on the road, you were mentioning to me a little earlier that you've done some presentations on today's topic, which is on career development and mentorship in specialty coffee, which has become sort of a hot topic in the same vein as we're talking about developing our hospitality as an industry, and we've got a lot of certification programs coming out. People want to get better at their jobs, and you think that mentorship is one of the keys to that. What does that look like? When you talk about mentorship, what does that look like to you?
Well, mentorship is something that I think I know is a big part of other industries. It's a big part of kind of the corporate world, different things like that. But ultimately what we have is kind of, I would say, two pretty distinct kind of approaches. We have people who've been in the industry for over 5 to 10 years, and we have people who've been in the industry for less than 10 years. And it's almost kind of like a generation gap where the technology has changed, the approaches have changed in how we serve coffee. And it's not that they're not as skilled or they don't have, the abilities, but they don't have the history of the way that we approached it than when we did approach it. Mm-hmm. So for mentorship, a lot of it has to do with imparting the knowledge and understanding, the kind of more intrinsic knowledge of both how coffee preparation works, but also business strategy and actual businesses work and grow, as opposed to what we do, which is talking like hiring somebody, paying them to work, teaching them, essentially a dry, quasi-scientific number-based approach, if you will.
Right.
There's a lot of like understanding that we used to have with coffee in order to make it properly, because the technology didn't exist. And one of the things that I've seen with the technology existing now is that we're kind of missing some of those steps that got us there in the first place. And so the whole thing that comes back to mentorship in this is to be able to say, like, this is information that you should know. These are perspectives that you should be able to understand and see, even if you don't use them on a daily basis, because at this point in time, we still have a lot of value in it. And when it comes to a mentor, having a mentor or being a mentor, in my opinion, it's much more about cultivating, growth in people in a more organic, social way, if you will. Bringing, true collaboration of people, whether it be, someone working for another person as like I'm mentoring my boss, or with the use of technology that we have nowadays, being able to communicate, ask questions, or push other people's boundaries in a way that lets them explore or inspires them or creates a spark in them to explore something that they don't actually know already. And so, for example, say if I was I have a kid in Guatemala, for example. I don't right now, but there's a kid in Guatemala, and he wants to know, more about, how to make a better flavor for his espresso, as an example. For me, it's not some sort of official role, but I want to be able to give enough of my time where, you can't give this time to everybody, but to be able to give enough to say, hey, if you should try this, you should try, changing, the way you've been doing something, try this drastically different approach and see what you think about it. Don't do it because I said it's better, but do it because you might find a different result. And kind of cultivating that idea of finding your results, and exploring and experimenting on your own, so that you can, using your own brain, to then be able to determine if something works better for you or doesn't work better for you, or really, what it boils down to is cultivating life experiences that people can draw from, of their own in the future, as opposed to simply reading somebody's book or an ad call, or an article online or something like that then people start to quote and just say, like, so and so said this. Where the real value is where people have their own expertise and experience to pull from and say, no, that actually doesn't work all the time for me. I've had experiences otherwise, or that does work. I love the way this works, things like that.
Man,
does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes great sense. It's a great perspective. Let's say you go out and buy a book. You buy James Hoffman's World Atlas of Coffee, or Scott Rayo's Professional Espresso book. They could be considered mentors in a way that they present information, but what's the difference between assembling for yourself these remote mentorship, quote unquote, relationships with information through material, and having a relationship with a person? What's the benefit of doing the person to person?
Well, I think the benefit of person to person is there's much more question and answer. There's much more explanation and kind of delving into an idea. A book can be great and it can carry huge amounts of knowledge. But especially in the coffee industry, if you've worked in the coffee industry for, a little while, you probably know that not everything works for every coffee in every circumstance. Like there's no one rule for pretty much anything.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah.
Right. And so, typically a book or something presents something either in a factual context or in a limited context where it doesn't say, when I'm face to face with somebody and we're talking about flavor and extraction, for example, or even just a rough like TDS or measurement or something, I can say, this is what I know, this is what I've experienced, but let's try it. Right? When you're in person, you can say, like, hey, let's try it real quick. I got a TDS meter. Let's go brew some coffee and see what happens. And I could be wrong, and that's kind of the beauty of it too. Is I've got a lot of experiences in my life, but I'm wrong sometimes too. And so it opens me up as a mentor to be able to say, hey, you know what, that was a really good idea, and you were right in this case, and I think that this will change my point of view as well. And it's not just a you learning from me, like student learning from master type of thing. It's a continual growth, and everybody should be growing. So that's kind of the benefit I see of being in person is that there's more interaction, there's more communication, there's more just conveyance of ideas and conversation as opposed to monologue.
Well, that sounds like one of the things that people could have an objection to. Not an objection, maybe they're a little afraid of coming off as master and student relationship. not comfortable. Maybe they've had lots and lots of experience, and I still do this from time to time, maybe more times than I know, but hold back because I don't want to sound cocky or like a know-it-all. But at the same time, I feel convicted that, well, I'm also robbing them of the benefit of my experience, which isn't, necessarily something that I should be proud of because I got it from other people too.
Right.
What is I see a lot of this type of thing happening in the cafe, in the shop where, a good manager will do what you just said. They'll bring somebody to the lab or they'll talk to them about some coffee subject that they've been we're trying to work out. But is there something deeper in mentorship than just is it a commitment, a long-time commitment to an individual in the sense that you could follow them for years and help them develop over the years? Or can it be done in small bursts?
I think it can definitely be done in small bursts.
Okay.
This is something that I really enjoy, with traveling around the world, going to shows, going to all types of different events, is, I might see somebody once a year or once every couple of years or something. But we can still have an interaction that pushes or drives that person to sometimes greatness. That is largely motivated by something that I've said to them, or a conversation that we've had, or a question that they asked, or something like that. And I really do think, like, we don't have to have a constant interaction for that to be beneficial. And in all honesty, sometimes it's better because especially if they're motivated and if they're passionate, it means that I'm not holding their hand, right? Where, like, the person who's supposed to be that mentor isn't necessarily saying, no, don't do that. It leaves a lot more room for them to grow, because they will make mistakes, or they will do things that maybe don't work, or they might do something that's kind of crazy and totally works and blows people's mind.
It reminds me a lot of the TPS, the Toyota production system, that lean management concept of asking questions more than giving directions, letting people discover the truth of a situation, or the best and the most innovative way of dealing with it, helps them create ownership. Yeah, it sounds a lot better than having somebody just obey what you say and do what you say, and then you don't know if they've actually owned it or internalized it, which is really beneficial for managers who are tasked with making sure that things are going well in the shops. Mentorship or a posture of mentorship sounds like a really good thing to employ or deploy in your shop. Right. What has the response been when you talk about these ideas in your presentations? How do people respond to it?
People are very positive in response, especially with mentorship, and kind of another thing that I talk about, which is kind of cultivating your path, or your career path, basically. But that in particular, mentorship, people are very, very excited about it. They love the idea because it is an open invitation, essentially, to say, let's learn together. Let's talk about things. Let's have conversations, and people tend to respond very, very well to a clearly defined initiative of essentially saying, let's have a conversation and let's learn, as opposed to, I'm going to tell you what's right and you just need to listen to me.
Yeah, well, that certainly could be satisfying in the moment to have somebody just do it, pull a good shot of espresso. But in the terms of a win for the entire industry, it's probably better to have lots of people who have just a deep sense of knowledge of how to dial in a shot of espresso, rather than people who are learned one way and apply it to every coffee or every situation.
Yeah, and there's an interesting story I can kind of relate to that. So there's a guy everybody knows by the name of Matt Perger, and he made these crazy espresso shots on an EK43, right? History now, everybody knows about it. Everybody does these shots. And, and the reason I bring that up is not because of him, actually. It's because of all the people who've made espresso that way after.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tasted numerous shots from numerous people in very many different circumstances, whether in cafes, competitions, labs, you name it. And I've tasted a lot of them that have been based off of the numbers and the parameters, TDS, weight in, weight out, extraction yield, all of the data that we tend to collect. And most of the time they taste terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time I taste them, and I'm not saying that I haven't tasted great ones, because I have. I mean, I can name a few people, if we really want to, who've made fantastic shots off of an EK43.
Right.
Matt Perger being one of them, right? But the reason that I bring it up is because Matt could make coffee with that grinder because he knew and understood the intrinsic way to make coffee to begin with. Like, he already knew how to make coffee before he started doing that, and he still applied his principles and understanding of how to just make good coffee with this different method. And then a lot of other people came by and just took this method as a way to make coffee, and it didn't turn out very well for them because they weren't paying attention to the fundamentals still.
Sure.
And so that's where I really see the difference, is that somebody can go and, do something amazing, and it can be great, but at the same time, if we don't pay attention to all of the things that were actually going on with that, if we're only paying attention to the things that were obvious to us, then we might be missing the mark.
Right. And the people are treating it like a formula. You get this piece of equipment. That's the main one. People buy an espresso machine. They buy a grinder. The popularity of the EK43 being the prime example. Not to continue on the using Matt Perger as a example, but
because it was a good example of that, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good example of kind of taking things, missing the mark on the context of what else is happening behind the scenes, essentially. So
yeah, and that's something that people have the choice to feed that desire to have a formula-driven design to their career. And they can buy into it. They can buy the grinder, all of this stuff. I see it all the time at conferences, and you do too, where, people are just slavishly searching the floor for the perfect machine because it will be the success of their shop, or convex versus flat tampers being the difference between good espresso and bad espresso. These are all interesting symptoms of a much larger problem that's not so easily solved by purchases, but can be solved by purposeful, like you say, planning your career around understanding what's behind all of the things that we do, and the history that a mentor could bring to a person, help them understand how we got here, might help them understand how to get farther ahead. Yeah,
absolutely. Even just the difference in perspective that somebody learning on, say, a timer doser grinder versus somebody who originally learned on, an old fashioned doser grinder, where, the two perspectives are, I learned on a doserless grinder where it's one shot at a time, versus you learn to grind the coffee and dose it out and level it and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Being that, where I came from, I keep seeing it from my perspective because I remember the history, but you don't remember the history. But if you know that history, you'll probably have a different perspective on how you can take something even further than I can, because I'm stuck. Like, I can't see past where, the new things are sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, just different perspectives and experiences with gaining the wealth of knowledge that people have from the things that we used to have to deal with can be really valuable, I think, for the industry.
Right. It sounds like a two-way street where both parties have to be in this place of wanting to give knowledge to people, and also knowing how to teach a little bit. That's a hard thing for people to take on if you've never taught before, but you know how to do something. But it's a good challenge, and it brings growth to your own profession. And people who want to learn from others with experience have to go and kind of seek it out too. Because if there's one thing that's true about people with a lot of experience, they might be busier than people who don't have a lot of experience. Yeah. So what are the first steps for somebody who, let's take you and I, for example. We've got a lot of history in the industry, over 10 years, each of us. How do we, with experience, make the first steps to share our knowledge in a way that is close to mentorship?
I think the first steps are kind of exactly what we're doing today, which is finding a platform to reach people. Sometimes that is, doing speeches, doing presentations, being at trade shows, things like that. Podcasts, obviously. Creating a blog or an article page on a website, or guest writing, making videos, whatever that kind of platform is to reach people, is a good start. And once again, we get to that point of, we can talk at people, but we're not having the conversation yet. And that's when it becomes a little bit more tricky, and you have to have a little bit more conscious effort to turn that platform into a conversation point instead of just a either learning platform or, knowledge resource, essentially.
So it sounds a lot like you got to put some thought into it before you start doing it, so you know exactly what it is that's valuable that you've accumulated over the course of your career.
Yeah, it's always better to have a plan, which is to say, I want to reach people here, and the platform is how I'm going to reach them and how I'm ultimately going to be able to have those conversations. And I mean, it doesn't have to be as lofty as being on the internet, even. Obviously we can be in a cafe, or we can, have something in your local city. You can have, all types of things like that can draw people in. But it needs to be a point where people are willing to listen and, wanting to be a part of that conversation.
And this is, again, to reiterate for anyone listening who's maybe hearing all of our talk about this, is something that you can do. Theoretically, you could just do it tomorrow in your cafe. And, we talked about short bursts being completely legit for the mentorship process, investing in people. So I hope no one thinks that they are needing to have a business plan before they start becoming a mentor. But this is totally accessible. It just requires this mindfulness and conscious advance on the part of us with experience, and willingness to sacrifice time too. That's a big one. I imagine planning plays a big part in blocking out time in your day to give to others.
Yeah, it definitely works for a lot of people anyway. To be able to say, like, this is the amount of time, this is the time that I want to be able to, have this and give this, and there's an interesting thing about the human nature, which is, giving. Some people give readily, some people don't, but when you give that time, when you have that reaction where you see people grow and get excited from something that you're talking to them about, it's really fulfilling inside. I mean, it really makes you, like, it's not so much of like, hey, look what I did, but it's like, man, actually, like, I made a difference. I can be, useful to other people. And sometimes it's hard sometimes to see that. And so actively trying to give and at the same time learn from those interactions can be very fulfilling for people. So it's, in my opinion, a good use of volunteering your time.
Awesome. And for the person who is wanting to go beyond the training manual and the books, conferences, things like that. And they want to tap into the knowledge that somebody with more experience has. They want a mentor, essentially, or somebody to help them along. What would you say for them is the first few steps or first steps to make that happen?
Well, for people who are in the cafe, just kind of starting out in the industry or what have you, it can be difficult. I remember talking to a lot of people here, especially here kind of in the Midwest, where everything's spread apart, and talking to people about, this is the first time I've ever gotten to go to a show. Like, I had a lot of people in Kansas City when we had the regional qualifier here last year. Or was it? I guess it was technically this year still. But, they were saying, like, this is the first time I've gotten to go to a specialty, like, competition or show, because there hasn't been one in here in Kansas City, really, where all these people from around the country come in. At least not in a long, long time.
Right.
And so it can be difficult to, and you can feel really frustrating because you don't really get to have all these special experiences and meet all these people, things like that. Online forums are really pretty fantastic. There's a lot of, kind of like barista guild type groups on like Facebook and, some of these different platforms. Anything where there's good quality conversation going on, where you can start talking to people, you can start, asking questions and seeing what other people have, either as advice or, just their perspective. I know that the Washington State Pacific Northwest has a great guild that they're all really pretty active and talkative and everything. But if you don't have one, try starting one up. Try finding the people who are around you who are like-minded and interested and wouldn't mind being added to a little Facebook group or things like that. But ultimately, I think that seeking out and ultimately, honestly, determining and figuring out who and where you find to be good, useful sources of knowledge. Like I say, podcasts. There's lots of websites out there. There's lots of books. There's lots of stuff. And a lot of people read. Like, I read this guy's book and I read this guy's website and I read this guy's blog and I read all this stuff. And you need to not just read what people are saying, but honestly determine what is valuable for you. Try to focus what you're paying attention to, as opposed to just trying to take everything in. And this kind of goes to a little bit of when I talk about kind of career planning, which is find some goals. Like, say, I want to do this thing. I want to do. I want to try to be a cupper someday, or I want to be able to have a job. You can have a kind of a long-term goal or a mid-term goal, but basically, like, I want to be a green coffee buyer someday, which is pretty popular still. And having that goal, and then say, okay, I can't just go and do that tomorrow because, first of all, I don't have enough experience. And you have to be realistic with yourself and say, hey, I don't have enough experience to do that today.
Yeah.
But what do I need to do to get there? How do I develop my palate? How do I get the experiences that I need to get this to work? How do I get the access to even like having the equipment or a lab or something like that? And you can kind of start making these smaller short-term goals that help you get to where you want to go, segmenting and really focusing on small, we call like action items or small focused steps. You can achieve in a month or two's time, where you can be really focused and super like, yeah, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm super excited about it. I'm learning. And when you achieve that, it feels good, first of all. And then it also is a good step because now you have some experience with that and it can lead you to your next step and ultimately start getting you toward your goal, it's a lot of it's problem solving. Figure out what your goals are, figure out what the problems are that are, either you don't know or you are keeping you from getting there or whatever it is, and find solutions. This is, it takes creativity. It's not easy because, you don't always have the answers, but seeking out the answers and like thinking outside the box as much as you can to figure out how to get there is almost as invaluable as the knowledge of the classes or schools or anything you might actually go to. And the process of figuring it out is extremely valuable.
Yeah, it seems like setting small goals especially is important for somebody who is, you got a schedule already, you're doing things, you got a life, you need to make that plan is going to actually have success, that it's going to make your dreams more successful, especially you're busy now and you're going to have a child soon. So that just gets busier, and the things that you used to be able to do in an hour now have to be done in 4 15-minute segments. But that's the case for also pre-close on a closing shift in a cafe. And that's the case for the condiment bar in the morning after everybody's used it to get it back to, perfect. So you can almost take the things that you are already doing with your workflow on the bar and apply it to your career or your life. And another thing that the person pursuing mentorship should understand, at least from what I've seen, and is a lot more people want to help than don't want to help. It's just, I think the people who are busy might just be busy, and that's it. It's not they're not against helping people. So taking the first step to approach somebody might be exactly what they need to get their foot in the door, and it can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's I think important to remember for people seeking mentorship or seeking answers from things is, honestly, it never hurts to ask. But keep in mind, if you don't get a response, or you get, just a very short response, like I don't have the time or something like that, don't be offended by it. A lot of people are very busy and they don't have a huge amount of time, but you're right. I mean, most people out there in the industry are not against sharing knowledge. In my opinion, we have one of the more open, sharing friendly industries out there in the world in a lot of ways. And I mean, that's how I learned. That's how, tons of people learned, is just talking, asking questions, experimenting with other people, and a lot of times volunteering your time and taking the time to learn and understand stuff. Even if you don't realize that's what you're doing, it's what you're doing, Sometimes I remember a lot of times I was just volunteering my time because I liked it. It was fun. And then after a couple of years, it's like, I've actually learned a lot I actually know quite a bit about this now that I start talking about it. It is important to still love what you do,
Absolutely. And I think what we can take away from this is that if each party makes the first step, I think both will be pleasantly surprised at the benefits that having that kind of mentor relationship and posture towards learning can have for both of you guys. Yeah. And as we end here, is there any resources that people can look to that have been helpful for you to wrap their minds around this a little bit more? Books, websites, videos, things like that?
I think it probably depends on specifics, like what specific type of thing you're looking for, or if there's a specific skill or anything like that you're looking for. This is what I mean. This honestly, like I'm kind of stumped right now, because this is why I like to say, you have to find what is the most valuable for you, right. Because I think everybody has a certain need that they need to fill, and they need to find the sources that are giving them the most knowledge, or giving them the most value for their time in learning. And so,
well, it seems like there's so much information out there in coffee, on coffee, and more information on relationships coming out, and how we can be better people to one another in general in the cafe and outside of it. But what I was just thinking about is that it's sort of an unfair question, because the point is not to kind of immerse yourself into more remote learning, but to sort of go out there and start to talk with people face to face and develop those relationships. And so maybe finding more information about this looks like just go talk to somebody, and like, they might not be the right fit for you, but you never know until you try, and you're not committing, you're not signing anything.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, also, and that's the thing, like when you're choosing, you have the power to decide if this is a valuable thing for you, or if it's a good, mentor-mentee relationship type of thing, whatever that is. But the power is really yours to say, you know what, I really respect this person, but I don't really think this is quite, like, I don't think I'm getting much out of it, or I don't think I really, this doesn't really resonate with me.
Yeah.
And to say, like, hey, I'm gonna try talking to some other people too, and see what it is that really, you don't always want to find someone who agrees with you on everything, or that you agree with on everything, but you want to find people who, stimulate your brain and make you thoughtful, and let's say passionate, curious, and interested in what's happening and what they're talking about.
Right on. That's definitely it sounds like something it's challenging for me now, having had this conversation to look for opportunities to become that for someone else. And also, I'm not saying that I or anyone with experience can't also benefit from being mentored, because no matter how much experience you have, someone else's perspective can always help you develop farther and be better.
Absolutely.
So, Pete, thank you so much. This has been just a real helpful conversation, and I'm sure that anyone who's been listening to this hopefully has been taking notes or just kind of marking some stuff down in their head as they're driving. But where can people find you from here? How can people get in contact with you?
Well, my, I'm on all the social media. You can find me pretty easy. My name's the Pete Licata. It's pretty much all one word on anything that's out there. I have an extremely long email, which is terrible to have people write down. It's Pete at Licata Coffee Consultants with an S at the end.com. And I mean, I get emails and questions all the time. I have, obviously the websites we get lots of people submitting stuff on websites and all, but yeah, social media and email is usually the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or if you're in Kansas City, send me a message sometime and see if we can meet up somewhere, or if I'm going to be somewhere and we can have a coffee and talk sometime. Awesome.
Once again, thank you, Pete, and have a excellent, safe, and just amazing trip in China next week.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, man.
Good talking to you.
All right. Really great insights and wisdom from Pete there. Pete acting like our mentor here in this episode. So thank you so much, Pete, wherever you are, for helping us, for just taking time and investing into helping us learn how to share knowledge and invest in others, and how to just be proactive in finding people to act as mentors for our own careers. I know that I'm challenged myself to do both of those things, to be intentional when it comes to finding help for my career goals and also helping others with theirs. I think we should be asking ourselves, where do we want to go with our careers? What kind of experiences do we need to get us there? And who do we need to be around and ask for help in the process? We could take our goals for our careers and break them down into smaller chunks. Like Pete said, that would give us better momentum. It would make it more attainable. And we should look for opportunities to get people to answer our questions and ask them for help. I mean, the worst they can say is no, but like we said in the conversation, most people want to help. So don't be bashful about asking for help. I think community in specialty coffee is a strong one. We have a great community of people who are pretty open with information. But, also look for opportunities this week to be a mentor and invest into someone else as well. Somebody that you work with or somebody that you know. If they have a question, maybe take a little extra time to explain stuff or give them some advice and help them in their career. And if you've been in this industry for any length of time, chances are you've had a moment where somebody took some time out of their day and shared something with you. It doesn't even have to be a long period of time, but it acted as a game changer in some cases for where you were going in your career, and it really helped you out. And you never know if you're going to do that for somebody else too. So go out there and find those opportunities. Now, as a side note, I wanted to say a big congratulations to Pete and his wife, Masha, who are now, since the recording of this conversation, new parents to a beautiful baby girl. So congratulations, guys. I hope you get all the sleep you can and just enjoy the beauty of being parents. Congrats. You can find the show notes, which is just a summation of today's main points and key takeaways in PDF form on the website, keystotheshop.com, under the Resources tab. And you can also sign up for a little bi-weekly newsletter that delivers helpful links and content as a resource for your career, as well as news of new episodes or new blogs and things like that. So sign up there. And also, if you like today's episode, just leave us a review in iTunes, subscribe to the show. It all helps the show get out there more. And the more people get to see this information, the better. So thanks for listening today, and I hope you have an amazing week. And now go make that coffee and bust that table. Go tell the customer what the Wi-Fi password is. And just remember, keep being inspired by people and coffee, because they are the keys to the shop.